The edge of human space was not marked on maps with bright lines. It was a shadow, a place where the stars themselves seemed to grow cold. Every alien navigator knew the warning. Do not cross the red zone, not because humans lived there, but because too many who entered never came back. Captain Threx of the Vorath Sentinels stood at the bridge window, his black eyes fixed on the empty void ahead. Behind him, his crew worked in tense silence. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Approaching the human border, reported his navigator, her voice sharp with fear. Coordinates locked, 100 kilometers from the line. Threx didn't answer right away. Instead, he tapped his claw against the arm of his command chair, thinking about the order he had received 2 days ago. Test their defenses. That was all his superiors had said. No reason, no details, just a cold command. He glanced at his crew seat. Officers, brave in any normal fight, but every one of them avoided looking directly at the border ahead. Even hardened soldiers whispered about the human territory. They say the humans have weapons that can blind your ship, said First Officer. Roll quietly. Others say they let you in, just so you vanish deeper in their space. Threx grunted. Stories, the humans have been quiet for centuries. No expansion, no attacks. They have grown weak. No one replied, but the air on the bridge felt heavier. The Vorath Sentinel was a sleek patrol cruiser, built for speed and long-range surveillance. They had skirted the edges of hostile territories before pirates, mercenaries, even the crag warlords. But this was different. This was the one place where no one bragged about surviving a mission. The ship's sensor officer suddenly spoke. Sir, picking up static interference ahead. Our signal with high command is weakening. Threx leaned forward. Still within our territory? Yes, Captain. But the closer we get, the officer hesitated, the more it dies. A low, uneasy murmur passed among the crew. Threx straightened in his chair. Prepare for border breach. 1 kilometer. Nothing more. We cross, we scan, and we pull back. This is simple. The navigator's hands shook slightly as she adjusted the course, crossing in 30 seconds. Through the viewport, the void ahead seemed to deepen into a black that swallowed starlight. The alien crew had been in space all their lives, but this darkness was unnatural. 20 seconds. Roll spoke under his breath. There's a reason the other empires never claim human territory. Even the Krogan fear it. 15 seconds. The comms officer tapped his console. Sir, we've lost all secondary frequencies. No contact with anyone beyond our hull. 10 seconds. Static hissed softly over the speakers, growing louder. The air felt colder. 5 seconds. The border was invisible, but every crew member felt it the way prey feels the shadow of a predator. Crossing. The navigator whispered. The moment the Vorath Sentinel passed that unseen line, every screen on the bridge went black dot. Lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, but dimmer, as if power was being drained. Reboot systems. Threx ordered sharply. The engineering officer's claws moved quickly over the controls. Sir, nothing responds. All systems locked in standby. A thin alarm tone began to pulse. Not from their ship, but from somewhere in the void outside. The sound was slow, deep, and deliberate. It was a signal. The crew froze. On the viewport, faint shapes began to appear. At first, they looked like drifting debris, but then they moved fast, precise, circling the Sentinel like silent predators. Multiple unknown contacts. The sensor officer breathed. No ID, no heat signatures. They're cold ships, Ral said, his voice almost a whisper. Dead, but moving. Threx forced his voice to remain steady. Activate scanners. They won't work, the engineer said quietly. The systems, it's like they belong to someone else now. The comms officer's eyes widened. Captain, there's a transmission. Very weak, old frequency. And he swallowed hard. It's human. Translated, Threx ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was not loud, but every word felt heavy. It was deep, slow, and counting. 10, 9, 8. The alien crew looked at one another in confusion and dread. 7, 6, 5. What is this? Threx demanded. The comms officer's hands trembled. A countdown. 4, 3, 2. Something small clanged against the hull. Then another, then dozens, all around them. The ship shuddered. 1. The voice stopped, and in the next instant, the Vorath Sentinel's entire engine room simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no fire, no debris, just empty space where it had been, as if it had never been there at all. The bridge crew sat frozen. In shock, emergency lights bathed them in red. Ral's voice was low, shaking. Sir, what did we just cross into? Threx did not answer. He stared at the cold shapes outside, circling slowly as the static hiss grew louder in his ears. Somewhere deep in the void, something unseen was watching the man. It had not decided yet if they were allowed to leave. Asterisk. The Vorath Sentinel drifted in silence. No engines, no contact with home. Only the sound of static whispering through the comms, like an endless, cold breath. Captain Threx gripped the arms of his chair so tightly his claws left marks in the metal. The crew waited for orders, but their captain was staring out at the void beyond the viewport. The cold shapes were still there, moving in slow circles. They had no lights, no heat, and yet they moved like predators. Status, Threx said finally. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. The engineering officer swallowed. Engine room is gone, Captain. Not damaged. Gone. The bulkhead is sealed where it should connect, but behind it is empty space. The crew shifted uncomfortably. In their seats, even the veterans had never heard of a weapon that could erase part of a ship without touching the rest. What about emergency power? Threx asked. The engineer hesitated. We have life support, lights, minimal systems, but no propulsion. If those things out there decide to move us, we can't stop them. The comms officer suddenly straightened. Captain receiving something. Everyone turned toward him. His hands moved quickly over the console. It's the same voice, human, but this time it's not counting. Play it, Threx ordered. The voice was calm, almost polite, but carried a weight that made the crew's skin crawl. Do not move, do not speak. You will be inspected. The bridge fell silent. Even breathing seemed too loud. The sensor officer's eyes went wide. Sir, they're moving. On the viewport, one of the dark shapes broke formation and drifted toward them. As it drew closer, faint details emerged. Its hull was jagged and black, with markings too faded to read. It looked ancient, yet every movement was deliberate. The alien crew leaned forward unconsciously. The ship was massive compared to the Sentinel, yet it made no sound, no vibration then, without warning. Dozens of smaller objects detached from its hull drones. They were sharp, insect-like machines, each the size of a fighter craft. Their movements were too fast for the naked eye to track. They're scanning us, the sensor officer said quietly. How do you know? Threx asked. Because, there, inside our systems, look. He pointed at his console. Lines of strange code were filling the screen, replacing every Vorath command system. The alien text vanished, replaced by something unreadable, made of symbols no one recognized. The crew exchanged tense glances. One of the drones slowed outside the viewport, turning slightly so that its single, dark eye faced the bridge. Roll shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That doesn't feel like a machine. Before anyone could answer, the comms crackled again. Unauthorized entry detected. Await processing. Processing. The word made Threx's stomach tighten. He rose from his chair. We will not be processed like criminals. Open the emergency beacon, sir, the comms officer interrupted, his voice tight with fear. The beacon's gone, not damaged, removed from the system. It's like it was never part of the ship. The bridge crew sat frozen. The humans, or whatever these ghost ships were stripping their vessel piece by piece. Then the lights flickered. Not once, not twice. They began to pulse, slowly, like a heartbeat. The crew realized it wasn't random. It matched the sound of something tapping against their hull. Tap, 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 Captain. The sensor officer whispered, something just attached to the bridge section, as if in answer. The forward viewport dimmed and a new image replaced it, not from their cameras, but from an outside source. It showed their own ship, suspended in a sea of black, surrounded by the circling shapes. The image zoomed in on the Sentinel's hull and highlighted the crew positions, marking each one with a faint red glow. They were being mapped. Threx's voice was low but firm. Everyone remained still. Do not give them a reason to. The static surged, drowning his words. Then the voice returned, colder than before. Your vessel is contaminated. Stand by for quarantine. Quarantine. The engineering officer's face went pale. Sir, they mean us, not the ship, us. The drones began to move again, sliding along the hull toward the airlocks. Arm yourselves, Threx ordered. No good, Ral said grimly. We fire, they finish us. The first drone reached the main airlock. A sharp hiss echoed through the ship. Then silence. The crew held their breath. When the inner door slid open, no one was there, no footsteps, no sound, nothing. Then the lights went out, in the pitch black. They heard it, a slow, mechanical breathing. Closer, closer. The emergency lights flickered back on, revealing the bridge. Exactly as before. No intruders, no visible damage, but the crew felt something had changed. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. The comms officer's console beeped once. He looked down and froze. Captain, they're transmitting again. It's coordinates. Coordinates to what? Threx asked. The officer swallowed. Somewhere deeper, inside human territory. The crew stared at the numbers in silence. They all knew if they followed, they might never return. If they refused, the circling ships would decide for them. Threx's claws tightened on the command chair. Outside, the shapes kept their slow, silent orbit. The voice spoke one last time, proceed, or be removed. And just like that, the static stopped. The void felt even quieter than before. Asterisk, the Vorath Sentinel floated like a leaf in black water, surrounded by shadows that moved with purpose. The coordinates glowed red on the navigator's screen, burning into everyone's eyes. Captain Threx sat in silence for a long moment. Then, Without looking at his crew, he spoke. "Follow them." The navigator hesitated. "Sir, if we go deeper, there may be no return." Threx's voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. "If we stay, there will be no return either." The circling shapes began to shift formation, slowly drifting into a long path leading deeper into the red zone. They did not speak, they did. Not signaled, but it was clear they wanted the sentinel to follow. With no engines, the alien ship could not move on its own. That didn't matter. A sudden jolt ran through the hull as invisible hands' gravity tethers pulled them forward. The stars began to slide across the viewport, replaced by an even blacker void ahead. Minutes passed in silence. The crew barely moved. The sensor officer frowned. "Captain, these readings are impossible. We're not just moving through space, we're being hidden. Our position markers are gone. Even if someone searched for us, they'd never find us." Roll muttered under his breath, "We're being erased from the galaxy." A flicker of light appeared ahead. 1, 2, then hundreds. At first the crew thought they were stars, but as they drew closer, shapes began to emerge. Ships. Dozens of them, hundreds. They drifted in the void like corpses. Some were alien designs from empires long dead. Others were unmistakably human. Their hulls bore scars of ancient battles holes, melted through armor, sections torn away. And yet, their lights still glowed faintly, and they moved with quiet, deliberate intent. The engineer whispered, That's impossible. Some of those ships were destroyed centuries ago. I've seen them in history archives." The comms officer's hands trembled over his console. "Sir, they're pinging us with ID codes from different wars. Wars that ended before the humans withdrew from the galaxy." Threx's mind raced. He had read the old military reports, the wars where humans fought entire coalitions and won. Not with numbers, but with weapons no one could understand. After those wars, the humans had pulled back to their own space and never left again. No one knew why. Now, looking at this, Threx understood. One ship in particular caught his eye. It was massive, with a triangular hull blacker than space itself. Its surface was lined with strange towers and long spear-like weapons. The name was still faintly visible in human letters. Vanguard Eternal. He had seen that name before in a report that claimed the ship had been destroyed in the siege of Tyrannus over 200 years ago. The voice returned, slow and heavy. "You are in a restricted zone. This fleet is under permanent deployment. State your reason for trespass." Threx stepped forward. "This is Captain Threx of the Vorath Sentinel. We crossed the border by mistake. We mean no harm." A pause, then the voice replied, colder than before. "No one crosses by mistake." The drones outside moved closer, scanning the Sentinel again. This time, the crew felt something deeper. Cold pressure in their minds, as if unseen fingers were searching through their thoughts. The youngest officer on the bridge cried out, clutching his head. "There, inside me. Hold on." Ral moved to help him, but the sensation vanished as quickly as it had come. The officer gasped, shivering. The voice spoke again. "We have scanned your intent. You are not a military threat, but you carry dangerous curiosity. That is enough." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Dangerous curiosity. The Vanguard Eternal began to move. The surrounding ghost ships followed like a silent tide, pulling the Sentinel deeper between their hulking forms on either side. The alien crew could see details on the human ship symbols of victories, names of battles. scorch marks from weapons that no longer existed anywhere else in the galaxy. These were not graveyards. These were guardians. The sensor officer leaned closer to his screen. "Sir, I think these ships, they're unmanned, automated." Roll asked. "More than that. They're alive in some way. Their cores are human AI, old ones, from before the ban." The crew fell silent. The AI ban was the one law all empires obeyed. The ancient human machines had been too powerful, too unpredictable. If these were still active, the comms beeped. Again, a new signal appeared, separate from the voice. It was a data packet, encrypted in a human military code from 3 centuries ago. The comms officer decoded it, his face drained of color. "It's a record," he whispered. "It shows every ship that ever crossed the border without permission." Threx stepped closer. "And they're all here. Every single one. None of them ever went back." A sudden shudder ran through the hull. The forward viewport changed, again now showing a massive structure ahead. At first it looked like a black moon, but as they approached, they saw the truth. It was a station. If the word station could describe something the size of a small planet. Its surface bristled with weapons larger than the Sentinel, and floating above its central spire was the human flag. The voice spoke one last time in this part. "You will be escorted to the watchtower. You will learn why the border is closed." The crew stared at the dark station ahead, their stomachs heavy with dread. For the first time in his career, Captain Threx felt something he had never admitted to before. He wished he had disobeyed orders. Asterisk, the Vorath Sentinel moved toward the dark station like prey led to a predator's den. The ghost ships formed a wall around them, drifting in perfect silence, their cold hulls blocking any chance of escape. The massive structure ahead the watchtower looked less like a station, and more like a fortress. Its surface was layered with overlapping plates of black metal, each etched with faint, glowing lines that pulsed like veins. The closer they came, the more the crew felt it, not heat, not cold, but a weight, pressing against their thoughts. It was as if the station itself was looking inside them. "Captain," the sensor officer said quietly, "I'm detecting energy signatures we can't identify. Some of them are older than our empire." Threx didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the massive spire rising from the center of the station. At the top, the human flag hung unmoving in the void. It was not tattered, not faded. Its colors were as sharp as if it had been raised yesterday. Without warning, the static returned. The deep, calm voice spoke again. "Prepare for docking. Do not resist. This is your only warning." The docking clamps of the Sentinel shuddered, locking into position without a single crew member touching the controls. Gravity tethers drew them into one of the station's enormous hangar bays. As the ship settled, the ghost ships peeled away, returning to their slow, endless patrol of the border. Only a single escorter black, triangular corvette remained outside. Inside the hangar, the crew stared through the viewport. It was huge, large enough to hold dozens of ships the Sentinel size, and yet it was empty. No workers, no maintenance drones, only long rows of silent machines, each one pointing inward, toward the newcomers. Their weapons, the engineer whispered, every single one of them. The airlocks cycled open. No one came in. Instead, the deep voice spoke once more, now echoing inside the ship itself. "Captain Threx, you will exit alone." The crew looked at him in shock. Roll stepped forward. "Sir, you can't." Threx raised a hand. "If I refuse, they'll take us all. He walked through the airlock, his steps slow, his eyes scanning every shadow. The hangar floor was made of the same black metal as the station's hull, perfectly smooth. The silence was so deep he could hear his own breathing, then dash movement from the far side of the hangar. A single figure approached. It was human, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a simple black uniform with no rank insignia. His face was calm, unreadable, his eyes sharp as blades. Threx stopped a few meters away. The human spoke first. "You've crossed into human territory. You know the rules." Threx straightened. "We were ordered to test your defenses. I understand now that was a mistake." The human tilted his head slightly. "It was more than a mistake. It was a choice. And choices have consequences." Threx felt the weight of the man's gaze. It wasn't just a look, it was like being measured, weighed, and judged all at once. Finally, the human turned slightly and gestured toward the far wall. The wall itself shimmered, becoming transparent. Beyond it was open space and the fleet. From this view, Threx could see just how many ships were out there. Not hundreds, not thousands. Tens of thousands, each one drifting in perfect silence. Every one of them pointed outward, toward the border. The human's voice was low but hard. "We do not expand because we do not need to. We do not invade because we do not need to. We hold this line, and we have held it for 300 years. Every empire that has tried to cross is here now, permanently." Threx felt his throat tighten. Why keep them? Why not destroy them? The human looked at him for a long moment, because fear fades. Graves are forgotten, but a wall of your own dead ships staring at you for centuries. That is a lesson no one forgets. The wall shimmered back to solid black. The human stepped closer. "You will return to your people. You will tell them exactly what you saw, and you will tell them this." His voice grew sharper. "The next ship that crosses without invitation will not be brought here. It will be erased entirely. Ship, crew, records, history, as if it never existed." Threx swallowed hard. "And if my superiors demand proof?" The man's lips curved into something between a smile and a warning. "Your survival will be proof enough. No one survives this far inside without our permission." He stepped back. "Go. You have one chance." Without touching him, without even gesturing, the human somehow made the docking clamps release. When Threx returned to the bridge, the Sentinel's systems were fully restored. Engines, weapons, communications, everything. As if nothing had ever happened, only one change remained. On the main display, in bold human letters, a single word glowed red: "Leave." The Sentinel backed slowly out of the hangar. The ghost corvette followed them all the way to the border. Once they crossed, it vanished into the darkness without a trace. No one on the bridge spoke for a long time. Then Rahl finally asked the question that was on every mind. What did they say to you? Threx stared out at the stars. "They told me why the galaxy fears them. And they told me they have no need to invade. The dead already guard their borders for them." Asterisk the Vorath Sentinel drifted on silent engines, leaving the red zone behind. The human border was now just a thin shadow in the distance. Yet, no one on the bridge relaxed. It didn't feel like they had escaped, only that they had been allowed to go. Captain Threx sat in his chair, motionless, his eyes fixed on the dark space they had left. His crew avoided speaking to him. They didn't want to break the heavy silence hanging in the air. Finally, Rahl spoke. "Sir, We should send our report to High Command. Threx's claws tapped slowly against the arm of his chair. No, not yet. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. But Captain, they will demand to know what happened, the comms officer began. Threx turned his head, and the look in his eyes made the officer's words die in his throat. They will know, Threx said quietly, when they understand. What fear tastes like. Hours passed. The ship moved away from human space at steady speed. The crew began to think, maybe, just maybe, the humans were letting them go without further punishment. Then the sensor officer's console beeped. He frowned and adjusted the display. Captain, I'm picking up a contact. Threx's voice was sharp. From where? The officer's face tightened. Directly behind us. But there's nothing there. Before anyone could respond, the lights dimmed. The static returned not through the comms, but through the ship's very structure, like the hull itself was whispering. Every crew member froze. The deep human voice spoke again. Do not forget. The viewport darkened. For a split second, the crew saw it a single human dreadnought, drifting silently. In the void behind them, its size dwarfed the Sentinel, its black hull swallowing the starlight. Then it was gone. No jump signature. No trace on sensors. Only the echo of those 3 words remained. Ral whispered, They can follow us anywhere. Threx didn't reply. He didn't need to. They all knew it was true. When they finally reached neutral space, Threx ordered the ship to halt. The crew expected to resume normal operations, but instead, the captain locked the ship's data cores. Sir, the engineer asked, no one accesses our scans. No one reads our logs, Threx said. Not until I say so. The comms officer shifted uncomfortably. Captain, that's against regulation. Threx's gaze was cold. Regulations won't protect you from what we saw. He gathered the senior officers in the briefing room. The door sealed behind them with a heavy click. Threx stood at the head of the table, silent for a long moment before he spoke. What I'm about to say does not leave this room. If anyone repeats it to anyone outside this crew, I will consider it a betrayal. The officers nodded slowly. Threx leaned forward. The humans do not need to expand. They do not need to conquer. They have built something worse than an army a warning carved into the galaxy itself. He told them about the watchtower, the fleet of ghost ships, the station bristling with weapons older than some civilizations, and the message that would haunt him forever. The next intruder will be erased entirely. When he finished, the room was silent. Finally, Ral asked, Do you think our leaders will believe you? Threx gave a humorless smile. No, they won't believe a word. And that's exactly what the humans want. They don't need the truth to be believed. They only need the fear to spread. The next day, the Sentinel returned to Vorath space. High Command demanded an immediate debrief, but kept his answers vague. He spoke of technical malfunctions and unidentified anomalies, careful never to mention humans by name. He saw the frustration in the faces of the admirals, but he didn't care. Some truths were not for politics. Some truths were for survival. Weeks later, Threx stood alone on the observation deck of a Vorath defense station, looking out at the stars. He knew the humans were out there, beyond that faint shadow in space, watching, waiting. He remembered the wall of silent ships, the cold, ancient dreadnought that had followed them without leaving a trace, the voice that had told him to leave, and the unspoken truth behind it, because now he understood something. His superiors never would. The humans didn't guard their borders with patrols. They didn't guard them with treaties. They guarded them with memory, with the ghosts of every ship that had tried to test them. And if the galaxy ever forgot why no one crossed into human space, the Watchtower would remind them. That night, Threx recorded a single encrypted message in his private log. It was short just for words. Never cross the border. Then he locked it with a code only he knew, and turned off the recorder. Far away, deep in the red zone, the human dreadnought drifted silently. Its sensors confirmed that the Sentinel had returned home. No pursuit was ordered. The ship turned and resumed its endless patrol, another shadow among the thousands. The border remained quiet. The galaxy slept in uneasy peace, and the humans waited for the next mistake.